All right, everyone, we're back on Morning Line. Our guest this morning, Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney, taking your phone calls, talking about some of these high-profile cases. If any of you have questions, 737-7587. And Clint, we got some calls waiting for you. We'll start things off with Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Joe.
Good morning, Nick and Mr. Kelly.
Morning, Joe.
All right, I have a question. You haven't mentioned it. If you did, I've missed it. There's been a second death at this same hospital that was done by a resident. Now, protocol, I think, requires a resident, when they do this procedure, which is a very dangerous procedure, where they trying to get an IV in and they can't get it in, so they put it in your neck and they punctured the carotid artery. The person bled to death, basically. This resident was supposed to have been under supervision of a doctor. The family, I think, had asked about this, and they presented this resident as a doctor. So, anyway, there's a big lawsuit on it, a $15 million lawsuit for death. My question, basically, I'll get to the question. The question is, this is a teaching hospital where you have a lot of residents and different people that's going through the procedure to become doctors. In your opinion, what do you think of teaching hospitals rather than, we got hospitals all over Nashville, but this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest. I know you know a lot about the hospitals and what goes on in them, and which ones are the best and which are the worst. What's your opinion of teaching hospitals?
All right. Joe, in terms of teaching hospitals, I think teaching hospitals are fine hospitals. One of the advantages of a teaching hospital is they are capable of taking a wide array of ailments and conditions that other hospitals can't, simply by virtue of the fact that they have a huge number of specialists on faculty, and because of that they're able to take patients that other hospitals can't. All right. And so a teaching hospital is a good hospital, and I wouldn't look at it any differently than I would any other hospital for the vast majority of problems that you might have. I don't think they're any better or any worse than some of the other hospitals, like an HCA hospital. In terms of what's the best and what's the worst, I just don't think it would be proper of me to sit here and have this discussion, because one man's opinion is probably not the right thing to do on TV. I will tell you that there are ways for you to check on how good a hospital is. You go to messaging boards, go online, and look around and see what people are saying about hospitals, and you can get a little bit better idea of the type of care that they provide. Unfortunately, however, and I'm glad Joe raised this, we don't have a system in place yet like we do with the doctors, where the hospitals have to report when and how many times they pay out in medical negligence settlements.
Yeah, because that'd be one thing to look at.
I think that would be helpful for those of us who want to select a hospital and do the research. But Joe, I'll tell you this, and I'll tell this to anybody who watches this show, the best way to find out the right hospital to go to is word of mouth. Ask around, friends, family, anyone that you can think of who's been to hospitals, ask them, where did you get the best care? That's always, in my judgment, the best way to find out where to go.
You know, his question about teaching hospitals, and I just wanted to ask you, it seemed like there were several stories several years back about the incredible workload and long hours that residents, the students at the last, they're just one step to finally becoming doctors, and they're in residency at these hospitals, and they're working insane 14-hour, it's like, I don't want to be the patient that one of those dudes sees or women sees in the 14th hour.
Correct.
And I just remember there were some reports of mistakes because they're being worked so hard that they're just exhausted.
Now, Nick, it used to be that these residents worked 36-hour shifts.
I had heard something like that. Right. So has that changed?
They changed
now?
that. Yes, they've lowered the amount of hours that residents can work. But your point's well taken. You don't want to be the patient on that resident's 14th hour or whatever the last hour of the shift is, because the odds are the resident is It's common sense. Is it going to be a sharp?
How do they do that? I mean, there are limits. Truck drivers can only drive so many hours on the open road before they're required by law to stop. How is it that these hospitals can have these residents who are young and learning anyway? Maybe they're young so they can stay up late and work them 24-hour straight shifts? That's absurd. You know what that is? It's stupid, and I don't understand why anyone can justify that, because they're actually seeing patients potentially in their 24th hour or whatever it is on these long hours, and that's where mistakes are going to happen when you get tired.
You ever asked yourself why the legislature takes such great pains to regulate the legal system and try to make it more difficult for patients to sue, but doesn't step in to address that situation inside hospitals? Think about that for a second. Because they have the ability to do that. Hospitals provide care, and in some instances they take patients from across state lines. They've got the ability to do that even at the federal level if they want to. Think about that, why they would take greater pains to address the legal system than they would the kind of care that's provided at hospitals in long shifts by residents, which you're right. I mean, common sense will tell you you're at greater risk if you see a patient in the 14th hour.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. Krulitz taught me, when you're in the hospital, ask a ton of questions. When I see a resident, I have nothing against residents. I'm going to ask them how many hours they've been working when they come in to see me. And if it's a little more than I like, they're out of there, or I am. Let's go next to Robert. Robert, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Robert. What can we do for you?
Yes, I was wanting to ask some question how my friend could get some legal justice for his case.
Sure. What you got?
He has his wife has had a issue where her kidneys were blown out by a iron shot, and she hasn't been able to get a lawyer to take her case, and he's got all the paperwork for that issue, but here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, he hasn't been able to get a lawyer to be able to take that case.
Okay, real quick, do you know when it happened? I just want to get that out of the way at the beginning. And we can still answer your question. How long ago did it happen?
About a month ago, or 2 months ago at the most.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's within the statute of limitations. Okay, so go ahead, Clint.
Yeah, Robert, why don't you have your friend call my office and ask to speak to Michelle. The number is 615-8000000, 615-800-0000.
We were surprised. We were surprised that the Kennedy law firm wouldn't even take it.
The Kennedy law firm are not board certified in medical malpractice law.
So it's possible they...
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been on these shows here. But yeah, give a call. Well, it's just possible that, they saw something and you may see it. You're not sure this is a case, but you nodded your head, I saw, when he said that her kidneys were blown out by an iron shot. Yeah. Well, you've heard of this? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. If you have iron supplements or need iron injections, that can cause kidney damage. It's a fairly rare incident, but this is something a nephrologist needs to take a look at. I wouldn't want to give a curbside opinion on this. But you remember what you said earlier? Lawyers specialize in different things.
Sure.
If you're in an auto wreck, you call the Kennedy firm, but you don't call the Kennedy firm for a malpractice case. If you need a divorce, you don't call my firm, you call a divorce lawyer. So that's why it's so important when people get themselves into situations like this, call someone who's board certified in medical malpractice law, not some lawyer who advertises in personal injury cases.
The standard of care would come into play with iron shots, then that would be a threshold. So there would be a potential case, and we don't know, just in general, if we couldn't, I mean, Clint, it would mean if all of a sudden you realize they gave her a lot more than she should have had, or...
Because it's a kidney issue that involves a nephrologist, that's a kidney specialist, and that person, what I would do if I were evaluating this case is, first of all, I would send the case to a nephrologist to look at. That nephrologist may look at the fact pattern and say, Clint, I don't see any negligence here. Or the nephrologist may say, Clint, I think there's been potentially some negligent acts here that led to the death of the kidney. I want to see the medical records. And so then I would bring the client in, sit down with the client, go through the facts of the case with the client, make sure I've got all my information correct, order the medical records from the healthcare provider, send those medical records to my nephrology expert, and then my nephrology expert can give a formal opinion as to whether or not there's been medical negligence that led to an injury. And if he'll do that, then I have the grounds to file a lawsuit in Tennessee for healthcare liability.
Okay, and that's all. And again, it's a lot of specialized process and work that goes into that. I just want to remind folks to think, wow, how can I afford to pay Clint to do all this?
It costs nothing. Right. The patient pays nothing at all, and the only time the patient pays something is in the course of me getting the case settled or getting a trial judgment, and my fee comes out of that. So there's nothing that comes out of the patient's pocket. Call's free. The consultation is free, and the opinion is free. It's always better to call and be told, hey, sorry you didn't have a case, than sit on it and not do anything about it, and then after a year decide, well, I need to do something about it, and then I would have to tell that patient, sorry, you waited too long.
Clint, you can handle cases out of state?
Yes.
Okay.
In Kentucky, I can.
In Kentucky, you can. Robert, in case you missed that number, we'll make sure to put it up before the end of the show as well. And yeah, just give a call.
Michelle's the person that does my screening.
Yep, she'll go through it, and then they'll look at it and see if there's a possible case there. Good question. We'll take a break. When we come back, if you're on hold, stay there. Greg, Jeff, Gary, and others, we'll get to your phone calls for Clint right after this.